everyone, it's Miriam here from the Veterinary Wellness Centre, and I've got Tommy Heffernan with me. He's a veterinary consultant, and today we're going to have a little chat about the microbiome and probiotics, prebiotics and postbiotics. So thank you for joining us, Tommy. It's very kind of you.
Good afternoon, Miriam, and thank you very much for having me along, and congratulations on the podcast and your new veterinary practice and
Thank you.
all the stuff that you're doing. It's I know it takes a lot of effort, but fair play to you.
Yeah, it's exciting times. So why don't you let everyone know your background in terms of microbiome? We're obviously mostly going to be dealing with pets, but I know your background is in farm animals mostly.
Yeah, so I'm a vet for over 21 years here. I'm based here in Ireland. I was in general practice doing small animals and large animals for 16 years, ran a veterinary practice. I've done lots of things since then, primarily focused, and a lot on farm animals. But in the last 2.5 years, nearly 3 years now, I've been working involved in research and development in the gut microbiome space across all species. So I'm working with farm animals, equines, pets, everything at the moment. So it's been really interesting. I wouldn't say I'm a microbiome expert. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years, Miriam. I don't think if anybody tells you they know everything about the microbiome, they're lying, because it's not rocket science. It's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff we don't understand. So yeah, I've learned a lot. I think it's a really exciting area. It's been challenging my conventional wisdom and my conventional practices around maybe how I approach medicine and health, and that's been a good thing. So that's a brief outline of who I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a sort of evolving area of human and veterinary medicine, isn't it? That it's quite exciting to be part of that.
It's hugely, I feel honoured actually to be involved in this project. And look, I love veterinary. I love veterinary science, the medicine part of it, the application I've always have. So to be involved in the kind of a project, it's sort of at the cutting edge of a section of that is exciting. As we look, we've so many challenges in veterinary medicine, human medicine, around reducing antibiotics, changing the way maybe we move from disease to health more and more. That's always interested me. And I think this space fits it nicely when it comes to gut health and the gut microbiome.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose that segues quite nicely onto, so what is the microbiome? I think some of us will have an idea or think we maybe know what it is, but how would you describe what the microbiome is?
So the microbiome it's a technical term. First of all, you've got to start with, I suppose, microbes. What are microbes? So we're talking about tiny organisms, viruses, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. When we talk about the gut microbiome, it's this collection of, in our pets and humans, trillions of microbes literally in the gut, working collectively. And it's kind of been recognized now that it's almost like an organ in itself. So all these, primarily bacteria, but there's other things like protozoa and viruses, work functionally in the gut. And they have 3 key roles. So the flora in your digestive tract of your cat or dog is involved with digestion, so it plays a key role there. Because 70% of the immune system is in the gut and the microbes interact with that immune system, very important for immunity. And they also provide, in simple terms, the good beneficial microbes provide protection in the gut, kind of an innate defense system. So our cats and dogs, ourselves, we're always exposed to harmful pathogens, and we don't get sick a lot of times because there is that balance between good and bad. I think we're now understanding as well in companion animal medicine that a healthy gut microbiome is not just going to be gut related. There's so many other factors involved, from brain health to metabolism to overall inflammatory processes in the dogs and cats. So really key to kind of understand what a healthy gut microbiome looks like. Sometimes it's hard to define, but really around the basics, we do understand that a diverse gut microbiome in our cat and dog is absolutely key.
Excellent. So really, if your cat or dog has pretty much any condition, so allergies, itchy skin, arthritic processes, anything really, that especially any chronic disease, then actually looking at gut health is likely to be an important part of that. And we shouldn't just focus on, say, that itchy ear, especially if we're giving drugs for that itchy ear. We should also be looking at the gut and the microbiome as well.
Yeah, so it's all about root cause and back to kind of what is the mechanism, what is the physiology and biology happening that may occur. because usually an inflammatory focus somewhere might have an origin somewhere else. And if you look at the gut, you don't want to be the person coming on and saying everything's related to gut microbiome. It's not. But we do know, because there's so much inflammatory cells in the gut, and there's so much leaky gut and low grade inflammation, that it is a primary driver of a lot of skin issues, maybe D, or maybe it could be HP, or whatever it might be. It needs to be considered in overall health. And I think whether it's animals or humans, we talk about we are what we eat, but really we are what we absorb. So getting digestive health right just plays into so many other biological processes in our dogs and cats.
Yes, so nutrition is a big part of what we do at the Wellness Centre, but you're absolutely right. We need to then make sure that the guts are healthy enough to deal with the good nutrition that we're spending lots of time and money in getting right for them. As you say, there's no point if actually we're dealing with a diseased gut or an imbalanced microbiome.
Yeah, so if we look at nutrition, the evolution of nutrition, it's the same I often reference human medicine, because it can be a good marker for us, kind of, that maybe they're 5, 6, 10 years ahead sometimes in some areas, that often translate back into our pets and what we do there, is that there's incredible complication when it comes to nutrition. There's so many options, there's so many papers to support everything, but primarily what we do need to think about is what we've seen over the last probably 100 years in, I think, domesticated pets and humans, is a rise in chronic disease. And if we look at evolutionary medicine, it's kind of this idea of how we develop and what our guts are designed to digest, and what factors around lifestyle and environment have changed, and what impacts that may have. And I suppose what I've seen from research I've been doing and reading is that certainly in our domesticated, maybe dogs and cats, that because of lifestyle and diet and nutritional changes, there is probably an increase in chronic disease like we've seen in humans. So, each case is certainly different. Our dogs have been developed to become omnivores, so they eat plants, they eat meats. And I think, in very simple terms, a lot of the rules apply, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, that, simple ingredients are still really important, that we can overcomplicate nutrition. And then when we look at cats, it's certainly it's a different dietary requirement again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like, we know for ourselves that eating whole foods, fresh foods, a variety of things, you quite often hear the phrase eat the rainbow, eat lots of different things, that there's certainly benefits to that style of eating for us and potentially for our cats and dogs. And it's quite tricky to find good research that backs that up, because there's no real commercial benefit in proving that eating a variety of fresh foods is important. But a lot of us want to do the same for our cats and dogs as we do for the rest of our family, spending a lot of time thinking about nutrition for ourselves. So yeah, I absolutely agree. So if we know what the microbiome is, then lots of people sort of understand what probiotics are, but the prebiotics and postbiotics might be a new concept to some. So shall we have a think about those? So I suppose start with probiotics, which everybody knows. So let us know your definitions for those, please.
So I suppose probiotics, we know that good microbes in the digestive tract are very, very important. And the idea of probiotics is nothing new. It's been developed for maybe hundreds of years, but certainly in the last 100 years, it's accelerated quite a bit. And the idea of probiotics is taking beneficial bacteria, so they're good bacteria, and supplementing the digestive tract with good bacteria. So we know good bacteria are important. Let's put more of them in. They're generally live microorganisms that either that should have a health benefit when administered. That might be the exact quotation, but they are, okay, we're kind of mimicking nature, trying to put these live beneficial bacteria in. They're a bit like factories, okay? They produce certain metabolites, there's certain factors that would help them grow, etc. So I think when you look at probiotics, beneficial bacteria we administer to kind of mimic what the gut microbiome should be doing, improving digestion, regulating immunity, and providing protection. My prior work to this, I would have worked a lot with probiotics, would have found them very inconsistent, to be honest with you, in the results. Kind of figuring out a little bit more why now. But that's the idea of probiotics. Then prebiotics, if we go back, probably the starting point. Prebiotics are the feed for good bacteria. So essentially bacteria ferment and digest. So if we look at it as our dogs, as omnivores like ourselves, bacteria break down a lot of fiber and plant material and use that as a food source. So essentially, good vegetables and stuff like that, if we put into our dog's diet, they are prebiotics. Then we have more specific prebiotics, which are like we'll have in first milk in for that whelping bitches will have for pups. That contains monoligosaccharides and these non-digestible carbohydrates that actually help develop the young gut. So prebiotics essentially are feed for good bacteria. So if you put a prebiotic into a dog food or cat food, what we're trying to do is feed the bacteria there. When we put in probiotics, we're trying to supplement the bacteria that are there. Now, what's very confusing for people and very difficult is that there's massive species differences across families of bacteria that will be in our gut versus a dog versus a cat. And even within dogs, you could have a couple of pets in a family, and those pets might have different microbiomes. So we have a narrow range of products we put in that are licensed, but they're called universal colonizers. So they're pretty recognized for their ability across different species that they have a positive effect. Then if we go to postbiotics, to completely confuse people, so we pre, pro, and post. This is an emerging area of research where we understand that the bacteria are like factories, probiotic bacteria are like factories. It's actually what they produce, the metabolites they produce through fermentation, that act at cell level. So these metabolites are short-chain fatty acids, tyrosins, bactericins. There's a wide range of them. But at a cellular level, the postbiotics are what actually manage the digestion piece, regulate immunity, and some of them are these tyrosins and bactericins that compete with harmful pathogens. So it's an emerging field, the postbiotic piece. So yeah, it's really interesting when we're looking at biological processes, we're looking at nature. If you look at the evolution of medicine, be it human or animal, we've moved a lot towards chemicals, be it antimicrobials or antibiotics. And I think there's a shift back now because we understand a little bit more. Metabolomics has allowed us to understand the processes that are happening at a very cellular level in our dogs and cats' digestive system. And that understanding allows us to work more with nature to enhance it. Again, I will always say, Miriam, I don't give short answers, apologies. I will always say that we need to get the basics right, okay?
Yes.
Even if we're using pre and pro and postbiotics, they're tools, but diet, managing stress in our dogs, managing exercise, managing their lifestyles like ourselves, that's the key element of a healthy and happy pet. Pre, pro, and postbiotics, when you use them, they're tools to maybe overcome stresses where there's conditions, or supplement where we know that everyday lifestyles of our pets like ourselves will bring stress, so these supplements help.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make as well. We're not certainly wouldn't want everyone to just go out and buy their pre, pro, and postbiotics and think that that's going to be a magic cure, because it is. We have to take a holistic approach and look at every element. But as you said, there are elements of our daily life that can affect the microbiome. So I think when we spoke before, that you said there was some evidence for things like how long, say, a course of antibiotics can affect the microbiome, or even things like our regular defleeing and deworming treatments that we're using in our dogs and cats. Remind me what the research says about any of those.
Yeah, so antibiotics, it's been well researched that antibiotics, because of they don't select for good and bad bacteria. They're very effective at killing bad bacteria, which are our pathogens, which we want. They're useful tools, but they're also kill the good microbes when our dog or cat goes on to a course of antibiotics. Depending on the antibiotic choice and the condition, the long-term effects, the studies can be anywhere from lifelong to year-long, but certainly most studies would suggest there's an impact on gut health for the 3 months. So it's very wise, I think, to look at supporting gut health during periods of antibiotic treatment. Again, when we look at the ivermectins, a lot of those type of worming products we use, that's a class of wormer that's used in pets very commonly, very effectively. Again, it does have, the studies will show, will have a negative impact on the gut microbiome. So when we're using chemicals to treat something, we need to look at the whole picture to see what impact they have. So antibiotics are one thing. What's interesting when you look at the research of what are the major factors that impact the gut microbiome in our dogs and cats, and it can be very simple things like diet, stress. I get to talk and work with a lot with vets. We underestimate the impact of stress. And each dog or cat will have their own behavioral needs and sort of a tolerance for stress. But don't underestimate the impact of stress, changes in maybe rehousing, rehoming, new additions to the family. All those little triggers can actually impact. The stress produces cortisol, which impacts the gut, which negatively reduces down the diversity in the gut, but also increases motility, and it's a very important protective layer in the gut. It reduces that down. The other interesting thing that we have to think about, and I think it's really relevant for dogs and cats, is that when we have an unhealthy gut, it can have quite a negative impact on brain health and behavior, and that's well recognized as well. So I'm not sure where I started with this story now, Miriam, to be honest.
Well, it's a bit of a cyclical thing, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
if you're stressed, then your gut microbiome will go out of balance, and then that will lead to difficulties with brain health as well. And you know, depression in humans certainly is a really big one. There's a lot of research, isn't there, with Crohn's, colitis, IBD, and depression in humans, and how the two are related. So for a lot of people who have, you know, it's a very common patient I will see is usually a dog. So a dog who is very stressed for whatever reason. Maybe they're a rescue, rehome, maybe they were a lockdown puppy, many reasons why they might be stressed. Yeah. And they've also got maybe itchy skin, or they've always had a sensitive tummy, and these are just all the things, and it is actually that they're all related. So you know, you can't just look for, say, a behavior modifying drug, which would be the old-fashioned veterinary approach would be, let's give it some Prozac and it'll feel loads better. Whereas now we would probably try tackling diet and exercise and environment and maybe probiotics as well. If there was upset to the guts, I would be looking at probiotics too.
Yeah, and I've seen that. Obviously, I'm commercially involved in research, and I'm technically involved in a commercial company that's in that space. But I do like the science of how things work, and I love getting that feedback. And you know, so many times we've had that feedback from dogs, particularly dog owners, and not so much cat owners, because we don't have that huge number of cats maybe with behavioral issues and gut issues. But certainly seems to be more of a factor with dogs, where 6-8 weeks in, and there's a notable difference on behavior when the gut health's improving. And that's because our gut and our brain are linked through a very important nerve called the vagus nerve, but also a lot of our neurotransmitters like dopamine and other neurotransmitters that are serotonin, that are actually kind of these happiness hormones, wellness hormones, if you want to keep it very simplistic. They're either produced in the digestive tract, and they have the digestive tract has a very direct relationship on them. And again, as you said, well documented on humans, this behavior gut piece. So it is, I think we've a lot more to understand, but it really brings in, and I love, we met at a conference, and we were very much the ethos of the vets who were at the conference, were in that holistic piece of understanding the complexities of all the different things. But if we are to move health to a different level, in both in humans and animals, I think that's the future. We're all in big trouble if we don't really adopt that, because we can only give chemicals for so long to band-aid problems. But I think it's something as vets we certainly need to maybe be more open-minded to. And I'm speaking from somebody who had a closed mind initially in this area, to that holistic approach and understanding. I suppose it's functional medicine essentially, and how all these things connect. But do not underestimate the impacts of stress. It's huge. It's huge. Yes. It can vary household to household and pet to pet what that looks like. Yeah. But factored in, we think about sick animals, certainly.
I think it would be an interesting area for you guys to move into if you are looking at doing more research. I see a lot of, when I do a bit of locuming at the moment, I do a lot of locuming in and out of hours clinic, and we see a lot of blocked cats, a lot of cats with lower urinary tract disease. It's very obvious when they're stressed because they have a very life-threatening condition that pops right up. And for a lot of these cats, they have either issues with their weight or something else, which makes you think, there is an element of digestion going on there as well. And for those, because for cats, it's much harder, I think, to think about their behavior, because cats just tend to withdraw a bit if they're stressed, rather than dogs make it a bit more obvious. They like to let you know. So I think that's kind of one area where it would be interesting to see if for some of these cats, sorting out what could be potentially leaky gut might actually reduce the flare-ups that they have. With these cats, often we do take quite a holistic approach, and we're talking about, positioning of litter trays in the house and relationship with other cats or dogs in the house, how they're fed, how often they're fed, how often their owners play with them, what type of play they have, so you do have to look at multiple factors. But I've never seen anything talking about looking at the digestion and probiotics as a factor, and I think that's quite an interesting one to try.
Yeah, because it just reminds me of a case I was dealing with a vet. Again, vets will ring me and we'll talk through cases. A cat, 4-year-old cat with ongoing digestive issues that had a very unusual jejunal blockage, basically impaction. And, we talked through the history, very difficult case, but the cat was a rescue. So you look then, maybe that seeding of the young gut never happened properly. So because once the gut microbiome is sort of set in I suppose it's in motions, if you like, for the first weeks of life, that dictates the future microbiome. We often don't change it. And then the two real incidents where the cat had problems was stress related. The last one was there was builders in the house, the routine had changed, and the cat went off appetite. So again, I think an underlying IBD probably coming back, if you look holistically, from the rescue scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, look, the cat thankfully got better, but it is about understanding what are these factors, what are these pieces of the jigsaw that determine health, because that type of approach will lead to a more satisfactory long-term solution as well, I think. But it can be very complicated, these cases. As you know, I'm not a real vet anymore. I'm not practicing, so but I do remember these cases can be complex, and there's the psychology as well for everybody involved, and the frustration that everybody would like a quick fix.
Yep.
They're not always there, and I don't think probiotics can be seen as a quick fix. They're a tool on that story as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same with when we're using herbs and things, and something I'll quite often say in these like webinars and podcasts is that the sort of advantage of using pharmaceuticals is that they tend to work more as a sort of switch on, switch off, big massive effect, but it does mean that they come with side effects. So we can use the two together. Of course, we could use pharmaceuticals, and we could be using herbs and probiotics alongside to try and minimize those. But if we're purely using herbs and probiotics and nutrition, it's going to take us a lot longer to bring everything down to normal. But hopefully the normal comes with less side effects than using pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and again, I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals by any means. I mean, modern medicine, we owe, so much to chemistry and chemicals, and they will always play a role, and there'll be always sort of new areas. But I think, it is that understanding. For me, my eureka moment was that chemistry has played a very important role, but biological processes and natural processes are key to understanding, I suppose, holistic medicine. And that is where health really begins to start occurring. You see it in humans. I like human medicine, always been fascinated by it. Maybe I should have been a doctor, but sleep, rest, exercise, and diet, they're the kind of pillars that we look at, and very few of us manage to do it right. It's very difficult because then there's human behavior, and then we're responsible for our pets to get the simple pillars right. We can't often, I'm speaking for myself as well here, we can't get those pillars right for ourselves. So it can be difficult to get them right. But the more we talk about it and understand that it's the basics we need to get right, I think we can really start transforming human and animal medicine in a new direction. I heard somebody talking about moving medicine from 2.0 to 3.0, and I think that's where we're going to be. Yeah,
and I think, as you said, that we're looking at optimizing health as opposed to necessarily always just treating disease. So it's a slight mind shift away, and I think lots of owners, that they're really wanting that for their pets. They want them to live long, comfortable, happy, fulfilled lives. They don't just want to treat diseases as they pop up. We want to do everything we can to keep them at optimal health and happiness.
Yeah, and I think there's a great quote on lifespan. So, lifespan is one thing, to live longer, be it your dog, your cat, yourself. But health span is a really nice term. It's about that those years are healthy. And we all, we've all had, pets ourselves or work with dogs or cats that have had a lifespan, but, had arthritis, digestive issues, and all the stresses that have gone with it. And humans are no different. So I like that idea that, it's a health span idea, that we, the healthy long life, not just a long life.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree. So if we've decided that our pet possibly has leaky gut syndrome, possibly has its allergies or its very sensitive tummy, and we've done all that we can nutritionally, and we've decided that we want to add a probiotic, many of us, and what I've prescribed historically in the past, many of us are using these freeze-dried powdered probiotics. So you're working with a company that does something slightly different, and it's a liquid probiotic, but slightly more complicated. So what's the main difference between these powdered ones and the liquid version that's the Precision Microbes
are doing? Yeah, so I am biased, of course. I'm involved in this area, but look, to me, again, I think hopefully people get that I actually like what I do and very passionate about veterinary and science and doing things right. So for me, it's a good fit. But if we look at going back to that definition of a probiotic bacteria being like a factory, okay, so it's the bacteria, okay, there's certain things they'll occupy space, but primarily they act by producing metabolites, okay. So if we think about those metabolites as postbiotics, what we've done traditionally with probiotic bacteria is we've actually dehydrated them out and freeze dried them, okay. And that freeze drying process has made it easily commercial. We don't have to worry about shelf life. We can put them into feeds and do different things. But there's a real challenge with a freeze dried probiotic bacteria is that it has to reactivate when it's administered. It has to go through its kind of lag and log phases bacteria go through and then produce metabolites. So if we look at even the human research around fermented foods essentially are pro and postbiotics. So live yogurts, kefirs, all the stuff that's really coming to the fore in human health. What we've managed to do is through years of research and development, is we use actually organic herbs to ferment these bacteria in a liquid, so they're live, and we get them producing into their log phase where they produce these metabolites. And over a period of time during that propagation, we have the herbs been broken down, we have the bacteria culturing in live format in the liquid, and all these metabolites. So instead of having a freeze-dried bacteria, if people can see my screen, we have live bacteria and their metabolites in the liquid. So one of the things that I got most excited about at the start of this was the speed of action maybe I saw with diarrhea recovery, because probiotics can be used to stabilize the gut, and the postbiotics are a really key element to that. So that was one thing I noticed first across different blends and species. But then on long-term use, we're really focused as a company when it comes to microorganisms and microbes and herbs and their metabolites, is the format has to be their best format. So that's taken a long time. The bacteria are actually in it live, but they're dormant, so their metabolism slowed right down the liquid through pH. That's taken a few years to develop. So yeah, it's all about the format. It's like if you were thirsty and I offered you an ice cube versus a glass of water. Okay?
Yeah.
So it really is. There's quite a significant difference in format, and we're seeing that coming through as well on the human side around maybe fermented foods, because they're lactobacillus. A lot of them are just lactobacilli and lactic acid blends. We're more formulated and more specific than that. But yeah, I think we're on the right side of history here. I think we're really doing something that's really interesting. As a tool, basics have to be right, but it's quite exciting. So if you have a dog or a cat with leaky gut, this daily supplementation, we're sort of mimicking nature. We won't, this is really interesting, in humans and animals, you won't reverse the microbiome. So if the cat or dogs had a bad start, maybe a rescue animal, severe stress, and long course of antibiotics, and the microbiome is in trouble, probiotics don't actually change it irreversibly. There's always a reversion back. So probiotic comes from the Greek word probios, which is for life. So it's a supplement for life. We'll often get a regression back. That might be a frustration for some people that, we currently don't have a reversing agent or cure.
Yeah.
I know that in humans and animals, there is a lot of work in fecal microbiota transfer.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So we're doing a bit of regenerative medicine at the Wellness Centre, and we will offer fecal transplants for those really severe and hard to manage long-term gut issues. But obviously, the research is quite limited in veterinary medicine, so we have to have gone down our cascade of treatments first before we get there. But potentially, so just to explain what that is, it basically involves getting some healthy stool from another animal. So from another dog, you get some healthy stool, and you anaesthetize the dog that's unwell. You give them an enema, and then you liquidize the healthy stool and inject that into the colon of the unwell dog. And the idea is that it populates their unwell dogs with the good bacteria from the healthy stool. Is that how you understand it pretty much as well?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
Miriam. I mean, I heard a very prominent human researcher in this space call it a crappuccino,
Yes,
which was,
yes, yes. Very good, good. I
you
might
know,
steal that.
look, the idea isn't a pleasant one, maybe when we think about it, but instinctively, from a medical point of view, and again, okay, we don't have a huge amount of research on the companion animal side, but if we look what's been done in humans and what we have seen, it makes a lot of sense, because what we're taking from is a very specific microbial blend from maybe the canine or feline species, which is an advantage. We're taking it there. I think one of the challenges my reading is, ideally you'd like to put it in orally, not always possible. You have to put it into a capsule. They call them crapsules, but again, so if we look at it, I think it has a lot of merit. It's a difficult procedure, but definitely for your more complicated cases, we need to be looking at doing it. Interestingly, when you look at the research around fecal microbiota transfer, that is one procedure that seems to reverse the microbiome on a more permanent basis than probiotics will do, whereas the tools that we create are very much supplementing. They're probably a little bit easier, and if they work in your milder cases, I mean, they probably are of huge benefit. But for your more complicated cases, I think we're going to see fecal microbiota transfer, over the next 10 to 15 years, probably being a tool that veterinary practices will be deploying. Once we overcome all the issues around transfer of infectious diseases, like we see in humans during COVID-19, it took a real stall in that process, because again, COVID could be transferred through feces. So it is quite a complex area, an interesting one. I suppose instinctive medicine would it makes sense for me, from what I understand.
From a biological first principles. I mean, that's where we get a lot of the herbal medicine and holistic medicine does come from a combination of human medicine and just first principles and logic, because often there isn't the kind of research and papers that pharmaceutical companies produce, because it's very expensive to do research. So unless you've got a commercial interest, for a lot of the things it can be quite tricky, but that's why it's really nice that that with the probiotics that you can actually get some some research behind you, because it's got a good it's got a commercial interest as well. So it's very exciting to see what research is coming out with it.
Yeah, and the other thing I often get asked about is maybe fecal microbiota testing on our pets. Screening on that. And I think I've looked at a lot of it. I'm not dismissing that some companies haven't got it cracked. It's very hard to say. I think what we need is more data and trends. We're seeing that now developing in humans, where we actually look at species and we can make assessments based on that DNA fingerprint of the poop, to say this is the families that are there. It may have a place, but we're nowhere near that idea that we can do a fingerprinting and then say these are the bacteria we need to use, because we're into thousands of species propagating different. I think we're a long way from that individualized medicine, precision medicine of individual pets. I think it may have a place. We may have an indication, like you spoke about, maybe with cats or dogs that are maybe overweight, and maybe we're trying everything, but is there something microbiome focused that's related? I think that would be an interesting space, but I would probably save my money on those fecal microbiota tests for the moment, and certainly the ones that are solving all world problems commercially online, I'd be a little bit cautious about them. But it is a question I often get asked.
And I know lots of people do it, but I think, as you said at the conference, is that you get a very pretty graph at the end of it, and it's quite exciting. You can see what the footprint is, but then we don't know what to do with it. So it's it's, you know, it's always good to have more information. I'm a big fan, because I'm a sort of medic focused vet, so I'm a big fan of testing of any kind. I love a good test, but we do have to only spend our money and our time on things where there's going to be a practical solution at the end of it, I think. Otherwise, you know, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think the challenge I've seen through my veterinary career and all the aspects of the different species I've worked around is that, look, we would love a magic solution. And like ourselves, sometimes the solutions are simple ones, but they're harder ones to adopt, because they come into that more, you know, nutritional, lifestyle changing space that we need to really think about. But those long lasting changes are the ones that really can define good health and achieve good health. So yeah, it is about being brilliant at those basics, which isn't easy. But the space is evolving. I think there's some nice technology coming out around it, and I think we will have more information in relation to the dog and cat microbiome genome and what that will look like. But certainly, if we're to follow the human trends, they're probably not in a great place. We have a lot of chronic disease related to it. We need to think about the gut as part of a holistic approach, and anything we can do to support it. And that's why the pro and postbiotics are something. They're a tool that can be put in the feed daily. They're a very visual tool. Our product, one of the beautiful things about it is they're visual products. People are kind of happy with what they see over time. Coat, again, is something people will talk about. And that's because the gut's like, I often, in simple terms, if we have a healthy gut microbiome, the gut's like a sponge. It's absorbing all those nutrients. And one of the factors for that will be coat and skin health. We'll get this short chain fatty acids to the skin, and we'll get that shine off the coat that we want.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking about what the microbiome is, how it can affect all parts of health, and whether we need to be looking at it more closely and how we can help it. As you say, very kindly, that the probiotics are not going to fix everything, and that really we do need to take a holistic approach and look at nutrition, look at exercise, look at lifestyle, and definitely stress. But the nice thing is that we do have this tool now, which will be really exciting for us to use at the Wellness Centre, and hopefully we'll get some good testimonial cases for you of it working well. I know a few clients have tried it already, and it's going well so far. So I think it's a really good thing to have.
Well, I'm incredibly biased, obviously, Miriam, but I'm also incredibly excited. I mean, I love veterinary. I love the science of veterinary. Veterinary has been very good to me on a personal level for my career. I've met so many interesting and exciting people. I mean, we met at a conference recently. We had a great chat about ChatGPT to herbs to everything. So you know, I do believe we're doing something really different. Time will tell, but we're a very young company. We're having quite a bit of success. Started in Ireland only 2.5 years ago. We're having quite a bit of success, and I think we're going to really change how gut health supplements should be used, even though they are just tools. So let's wait and see. Yeah, but it's for me as somebody who likes science and trying to innovate, and it is that feeling I think when you get, and it's, you know, I don't get it anymore as not being a practitioner, of actually helping someone through their pet. It's quite a nice buzz. So we're kind of doing it at a little bit more scale all the time. So I get to hear some very positive things. So you know you're on the right track when you're doing that. So
absolutely, yeah. And it's great that there's vets not working in practice that are doing stuff like you're doing, because then the rest of us can benefit. So yeah, it's great. And yeah, thank you so much for coming to chat to us today. It's been fun. Yeah, and we might do another chat at some time in the future.
Absolutely, and continued success to yourself, and good luck in the new practice in Edinburgh. Hopefully, I travel a bit, so if we're in Edinburgh, we'll have to call in to see the new practice.
Absolutely, definitely. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Miriam.